Welcome back to the Melodic Caring Project. Today we connect with our friend, composer and producer Andrew Joslyn. Andrew shares some of his music experience and talks about music as enrichment and love. He also dedicates and plays a beautiful Scottish reel on his violin to our rock stars and hospitals around the world. Here we go! Joining us from his home in Washington State, composer, producer, and phenomenal artist, Andrew Joslyn. Andrew, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Good. Oh, man. Thanks so much for making the time to join us. Appreciate it a ton. So you're very familiar with melodic. We've worked together. You actually, I have to say, and I have to thank you right now, because really early on in melodic's inception and, founding, you actually turned one of your birthday parties into a fundraiser for Melodic Caring Project. I don't even know if you remember that, but I will never forget it. So thank you so much, man.
You're so welcome. I do remember that. That was such a long time ago.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah. I am honored, and so thank you. I'm thrilled also to be reminded that I'm a part of your inception. So.
Oh, right from the beginning. Absolutely. Well, and man, since that day, since that birthday party, I don't even know, 9 years ago, obviously a ton has changed. Your career has changed. It has grown. It has expanded. You've worked with a ton of artists, and most recently, it's changed once again with all that's happening with COVID and everything else. How are you? How's life? How is music? How are things going?
For myself I do a lot of work in the post-production side of stuff. So like I'll do music for film, TV, commercials. A lot of artists will come to me with a song that's kind of like in its skeletal pieces. And then I'll do orchestral production. Like I'll provide strings and write horns and, conduct like a little symphony. And obviously with COVID, I can't have like a huge symphony, but thankfully work has picked up. And actually, speaking of the symphony, I'm starting a special mini series with the Seattle Symphony.
Oh, beautiful.
They're in a situation right now where they're trying to figure out how to pivot. Do they do digital offerings? Do they stream their stuff, or what do they do? And I've always been, me for years. I've always been the lone string player that's like, I like Tchaikovsky and like Smetana. Those are all beautiful, excuse me, composers. But like, I would love to hear like Alan Stone with a symphony. I would love to hear Macklemore with a symphony. I would love to hear like real heavy hitter, like contemporary pop artists with symphonies.
Yes.
And so they finally agreed, and I'm working with them on, because they had their Sonic Evolutions program a couple of years ago, but they canceled it. So I am trying to convince them to reinvigorate it, but like I would help them curate and work the program, and help choose artists and get them kind of caught up with being a little more hip.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, make it that's a lot more accessible, right? It's reaching out to an entirely different demographic, and maybe it's even introducing symphony to a whole group that wouldn't otherwise have been. It wouldn't be on the radar. I think that's super cool.
And that's exactly the point. Being like, well, hey, like bringing in an artist like Leslie Odom Jr. and having him paired up with the symphony, you get the the accessibility of a pop artist like right there, and you hear their songs, but it's completely fleshed out with a full symphony.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a music appreciation speed course. It's like, wow, I'm not bored by the symphony and having to listen to Wagner. Now I'm listening to the Odom with its symphony, and it sounds totally different. It's a completely different offering. Anyway, that's my hope and mission statement and dream behind this. So
I love that though. I mean, so here's the thing. I'm curious. Are you feeling creative? Is this inspiring you, or are you kind of feeling withdrawn right now?
I've done a lot of co-writing, a lot of work with different artists over the last couple of months. I actually just finished a track with Ryan Cabrera, from like, was it early 2000s, and he's back in creating. So I worked with an LA producer on doing strings for a track for him. I here's a fun one. I did a full like string symphony for Michael Bolton.
Oh yes.
I'm excited for that track. I'm hoping that drops soon. But the thing with COVID is everyone kind of reassessing, like, okay, when do I release music? How do I release music? I'm not going to be able to tour a song, so how do I get it out to my audience?
Yeah, sure.
Promote this. So it's so weird because everyone's rethinking about what the business model of music is going to be,
right?
But the thing that remains is people are still eating it up. People still want music. The demand for it's not going to go away. It's, but I mean, like the whole monetizing and the whole idea of the music industry and making it a sustainable, viable enterprise has been in flux since Napster.
Hugely. I was going to say, I mean, in a way, for that side of music, COVID hit 10 years ago, I mean, even more, right? With Napster and just distribution, and the whole model changed when the internet came in and took over. But again, I mean, that's why touring is such a massive part of their livelihood anymore, is because that's where they make their revenues, on the road, being able to play and perform their music, and not necessarily off of the recorded version.
And directly with the fans without any other middlemen.
Yeah.
And that's hard. That's hard for a lot of artists, because I mean, they get their the love of the art, the love of the performance, the love of the connection. You get that on tour, and if you have access to it and you're just stuck at home, it's like, oof, like all the money you put into recording that record and putting it out, and then now you can't promote it. I mean, it's interesting because on the side, like I've been getting very much into teaching, like the music business and career development, and kind of like the economics of the music industry and licensing, and it's to see how much things are going to need to change because of this is crazy.
For sure. So I'm curious, music is a huge part of your life, obviously, right? I mean, you recorded and toured with Macklemore and Leslie Odom Jr. and a ton of artists. When did you realize personally how much music meant to you, and is there a specific memory that you can tie that to?
I had because I had some extra money, and I was like, I'm going to do a study abroad. I'm going to go to Scotland. Like, I think that seemed like a good idea. And I brought my violin with me because I just didn't want to stop practicing and stuff. So I flew into Edinburgh in Scotland, and the first night I was there, I stopped at a pub because I was waiting for all these other study abroad students to kind of meet up at this like local hostel, and no one was there. I was the first one. So I was at a pub with my suitcase and a violin case, and the bartender looks at me and he's like, "Is that a cricket bat?" I was like, "No, this is a violin." He's like, "It's a fiddle?" And I was like, "No, it's a violin." And he's like, no, that's a fiddle. That's a fiddle. I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Do you have any Yankee tunes you can share with me?" And I was like, I'm like, I've never been referred to as a Yankee before in my life. So I was very confused, and I had just been insulted, and my violin is being called a fiddle, which, you know, in the classical world is very looked down upon. It's very apropos. So, and I'm like getting way too offended. And he's like, you do know that the violin's a storyteller. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, you know, the violin, that instrument tells stories. And I was like, I just flew into Scotland and some guy's giving me some sage advice and I was just not ready for this. And he's like, hey, he's like, so you don't have any stories to share, do you? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, here, let me share some of mine. Pulls out a violin from behind the bar and starts playing some tunes. And he's like, this is called the Glasgow Reel. This story is, you know, about like this revolution that happened and yada, yada, yada. And like, this was a huge thing for the Blair clan. And I was like, wait, what? And then he's like, and I was like, well, do you have any sheet music for that? And he's like, no, you got to listen. Hear me. This is a story. And he's like, the best stories in history were passed down orally. You're going to have to listen and learn this by ear. And I was like, okay. And like, you know, that was amazing. And I was like, okay, it's just like some crazy, you know, kind of weird experience that I'm having with this guy. And as we start playing and I'm trying to learn, all of a sudden, some guy at the end of the bar pulls out a penny whistle and he's just starting to play penny whistle. And then all of a sudden, 20 minutes later, a guy with a guitar comes in. And he's like, oh, hey, I just brought, you know, and it's like, it became this giant section. And then within the course of an hour, I had 30 people I've never met before engaged in this giant jam, sharing stories, talking about the importance of this music, talking about singing along these like sea shanties and jigs and reels and like Strasberries, these different like styles of Scottish fiddle tunes. And like, I saw the power of music to really bring people together in a visceral way that I never experienced ever in my life. And I was so blown away. I was like, I know what I want to do. This is my calling. Like, it was the single most moment that completely inspired me to do what I do today. Like, yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that is
like,
I love that, right? This succinct moment where all of a sudden it's like a whole new doorway into something that you spent your whole life doing. And all of a sudden you see it from a completely different perspective.
Completely different angle. Like I didn't come to a realization about music in some giant church or amazing performance hall. It was in a gross little place called like the Sandy Bells in like Edinburgh, like dark, danky, you know, and it's like, I just started with a rock band like the summer, like that earlier that summer. And then I was like, oh, wow, I now see the power here. And like, it completely like, I wanted to be the kid playing violin in a rock band. I wanted to be touring pubs. I wanted to be connecting with audience members. I wanted to be sharing stories. And like, it was like that was it. That was the moment. That was I have so many other moments along the way.
Sure, of course.
That was such a huge influence for me because it like really like, oh wow, that power of that visceral like community togetherness. Like,
yeah. Given your, you know, just your history in music and some of the incredible experiences you had, you performed at the Grammys with Macklemore. But I think even more importantly and more powerfully, like that experience in Edinburgh, you know, given all of these things that music are to you, can you wrap up what music means to you in one word?
Enrichment. It enriches life. It makes it more colorful. I mean, think of it this way. Music is the soundtrack for everyone's days. It's from something as menial as a commercial and corporate, like you walk into a mall, there's music. It sets the tone, the vibe, the mood, the soundtrack, You know, if you go into Abercrombie and Fitch, it's all high level, very like clubby mixes to get you kind of anxious to buy stuff. It enriches life on all aspects. And I mean, like, there's obviously so much more and deeper kind of impacts that music has, but I think first word off the top of my head, I'll say is enrichment. But I mean, if I want to go even like deeper and deeper, like I would say love.
Yeah.
You know, like I like a profound sense of communal love and just you know, basic human connection, basic human goodness, love. You know, but I mean, like that starts getting to the more like hippie granola side of things. So I'm also a pragmatist. So
No, I think it's beautiful. I think they're both completely applicable, and you know they almost mirror each other, right? What is life if we? And this is what we're seeing. What is life if we're not caring for each other, loving each other, having compassion towards each other? You know, I mean, those are the things that I guess you could see as expendable, that non-essential. But the reality is, life without it is very gray. You know, so yeah, enrichment I think is beautiful. We have some kids and some hospitals that are joining us. Do you have a song that you would like to enrich their life and their day with?
there's a couple of rock stars out there that I just want to give a shout out to, and I'm like, by all means, I'm your number one fan. Like, as Levi and I have been talking about, music is such an integral part of our lives, and we hope it will be a part of yours as well. Huge shout out to Tessa from Washington, Paige from Florida, Ambee from Michigan, my favorite, Mason from Texas, Parker from Washington, and all the kids that are watching at Seacrest Studios, There with Care in Colorado, UCSF Benioff, Children's Oakland, AdventHealth Tampa, and Holy Name Medical Center, New Jersey. I hope this next piece brings you as much joy and clarity as it has with my own life in music. And this is called the Glasgow Reel.
Oh man, incredible! Thank you so much. I can't tell you how happy I am that you decided to go on that study abroad program and learn that kind of approach. It's beautiful, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Like, hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully all the kids enjoyed that. Like, I for me to all of you, like there's a little piece of my musical history.
Beautiful, man. Andrew, any final words you want to leave with folks before we go?
Yeah. Things might seem really dark right now. Things might seem really heavy and a lot. there's a lot of pain and suffering that's happening in the world right now. I mean, for myself, I finally got to see my parents. You know, my dad's 92, my mom's in her 70s. They're very high risk with COVID. And it was, whoo, I'm going to start tearing up. It's so like profoundly like you start seeing what really is valuable in life right now. And I think that's I think the beauty of COVID right now is we're actually seeing what really matters.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you're a musician and would like to join us in supporting hospitalized kids, email us at rockstar@melodiccaring.org. I'm Levi Ware, and this is the Melodic Caring Project.